Thank you again for joining us this afternoon for this fourth session of the 2018 AgrAbility Virtual National Training Workshop. Our topic this afternoon is improving farm home accessibility, safety, and use of space. And it's our pleasure to once again have Carla Wilhite, who is currently a professor at the University of New Mexico in the Division of Occupational Therapy there. Carla has an extensive history with AgrAbility, having served on the Oklahoma and Colorado AgrAbility project teams, and she is also a member of our National AgrAbility Advisory Team. So we're well acquainted with Carla and very glad that she could join us today. Before we start with the actual presentation, I'll introduce myself. I'm Paul Jones. For those who don't know me, I'm the manager of the National AgrAbility Project at Purdue University. And a few instructions for those who may not have joined us before. You have an option of audio either through your computer or phone. If you need to make any adjustments, you can go to the Communicate menu at the top left. You can choose to increase, decrease your volume, or change your method of communicating or connecting with your audio. For those who need closed captions, you should look at the multimedia viewer window on the right column of your screen. You can expand or contract that through the arrow at the side. It's possible you may have to enter some login information, but you should be able to see those and make some adjustments to those also. For any of the windows, chat, or multimedia or present our participants, you can expand or contract those with the arrow. You can also expand or contract the entire right-hand column by clicking and dragging on the barrier between the presentation and that column. You will not see the entire attendee list today. We've minimized that because of potential bandwidth issues, so you'll probably only see your name, but we do have quite a number of people joining us today. Also, I'd request if you have multiple people viewing at your computer, if you could let us know in the chat window, send us a message and let us know how many people are participating. That will help us with our attendance. A couple more quick comments. If you have questions about the presentation, you have a couple options. You can, again, enter your question in the chat window. Make sure you choose all panelists as your choice to send that to, and then make sure you hit the submit button, please. If you'd like to ask a question verbally, you may use the raise hand icon, and that should be near your name, and we'll have the question and answer period at the end of the presentation. And so click that raise hand, and we will do our best to enable your microphone or phone connection to ask your question verbally. As soon as the main presentation is done, we do have our 4 quick poll questions. And after the entire presentation and question and answer period are finished, we'll open a final poll so that you can add any comments or any final questions you'd like to add. So hang around afterward if you would like to use that option. We are recording the session. It's on the agrability.org website under online training, and simply go to the virtual National Training Workshop link, and we hope to have those up by the end of next week along with the PowerPoint presentations. If you have any technical problems, we ask that you would let us know in the chat window. And if you're not able to use the chat window for some reason, you can email me, jonesp@purdue.edu. And that's also the email address that you got your login instructions from. So you can simply reply using that email. If any of you out there are not familiar with AgrAbility, we are sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And our focus is to work with anybody in production agriculture that has any type of disability or functional limitation. Every one of the AgrAbility projects consist of a partnership between a land-grant university and at least one nonprofit disability services organization. And currently there are 20 state projects around the country. There's one national AgrAbility project, and again, that's here at Purdue University, led by the Breaking New Ground Resource Center. Our partners on the National AgrAbility Project are Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, April, the Association of Programs for Rural Independent Living, and Colorado State University, also Washington State University. Don't want to forget them. Finally, if you'd like more information about AgrAbility, if you'd like to know if your state has a project, if you'd like to view any of our other archived webinars, please feel free to go to agrability.org. We all have a wealth of resources related to a variety of issues in disability in agriculture. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Carla Wilhite for the body of our presentation, and then I will plan to return for the poll questions and the question and answer session.
Good morning, everybody. Hope that you can hear me okay. We did the sound check, and that sounded okay. As Paul said, I've been associated with AgrAbility for quite some time, and it's really kind of the love of my life to be able to work with farmers and ranchers and also with other AgrAbility specialists. Today I wanted to just talk to you about improving home accessibility on the farm, talk a little bit about safety and use of space. You know, in the 45 minutes that we have available to talk about this, we're really just dipping our big toe into the subject. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay. So objectives for the session. I'm hoping that by the time we're finished, you'll be able to identify some of the major barriers to farm home access, and also consider how use of space affects farmers with mobility impairments. I hope that you'll be able to identify some consumer-oriented home assessments that can help the farmer self-identify and prioritize maybe making some changes in their physical space, and especially help them make informed decisions about the kinds of modifications that they can do that are cost-effective and efficient to improve their safety and use of space. And then lastly, that you'll be able to have some ideas to share with your AgrAbility customer about some things that are low cost, moderate cost, and then just delving into that conversation. Sometimes the high cost strategies are the most cost effective and efficient modification. And also hopefully kicking off the process, the thinking process for perhaps some of our older farmers about how to age in place, starting when they're maybe younger and still fairly mobile. But of course, all of us are going to get older, and hopefully we want to live in our homes. And speaking of home, here we have a photograph of a pretty nice little farmhouse out in the country. But it's a two-story dwelling, and that's also not unusual in rural places. So we think about farm, as being the home place. I know many of the farmers that I have talked to have talked about the generations that have been born at the home place. They've grown up, they've passed down the farm, and so it's really a place of deep attachment and memories, and also a place where most of us keep our treasured possessions, maybe the antiques and treasures, that have been passed down through the family, and especially family photographs. So a home really reflects who we are, what we value, what we do in the world. And so contemplating or helping a person get to a place of contemplating making changes to the home can really be a stressful and emotional thing. The upside to change, though, and hopefully something that we can encourage folks to think about, is that making the changes to the farm home fosters the person's continued independence and the enjoyment of their home as well as increasing safety. So it's not just about safety and emphasizing the disability, but also emphasizing that independence and enjoyment. Whereas not making changes can result in increasing a person's risk of injury or putting others at risk, as well as making us feel like a prisoner in our home because of structural barriers and, no longer to be able to enjoy that home. These are some pretty sobering statistics. And I just looked these up, so they were the most recent that I could find. But from in-home accidents, there are about 20,000 deaths every year, 7 million disabling injuries, and 20 million hospital trips, all because of an in-home accident. And the majority of these accidents are the result of falls, and the majority of deaths from in-home accidents are from falls. Every year in the U.S., someone that's 65 and older, an average of 7,000 adults die as the result of a home injury. So falls, when you come right down to it, they're the leading cause of home injury death. The interesting thing, it may be representing kind of a disconnect between our reality and our perception, is that when people are surveyed about things they can do to make their homes safer, they say they can't think of anything to change. So I think it's really important to recognize that perception that we may have. When we kind of drill down and start looking at rural and farm housing, more than 50% of all of our rural housing happens in a manufactured home. And I think that's significant because even though the quality perhaps of manufactured homes has increased over the years, not all of them have good structural integrity, especially for some of the heavy, complex wheelchair seating devices, powered wheelchairs that we might see. I work with an occupational therapist who was called in to do a consultation on a rural living individual with a high-level spinal cord injury, and a wheelchair had been ordered for him. Now the wheelchair weighed about 600 pounds, and it fell through the floor of the single-wide mobile home in which he was living. So mobile homes, they can make it difficult for the placement of fixed equipment, either in the walls, the ceilings, or the floors. So that's really something to think about. And also, about 5.8% of the homes that we're dealing with out in rural America are either moderately or severely substandard, greater than the national rate for metropolitan areas. So a lot of the homes that we're going into may have plumbing and electrical issues. A lot of the homes may still be constructed of lath and plaster, and have the tube and the run of wire going through the walls. It's especially, I think, troubling that on our Native American lands and in Alaska, there is a 10 times the national level of people lacking basic plumbing. Farm homes are often of older stock. I frequently see that there are narrow stairways that we're dealing with, and narrow doorways, lacking handrails in stairways. A lot of them are built on really tall foundations. The bathrooms are pretty small, and often multi-level homes instead of like single-level homes. And I don't know if that's what you guys find when you're out in the field, but that certainly has been my experience. So here we have a picture of a set of stairs, and this was actually at the home of a farmer that I worked with in Oklahoma, and he uses a wheelchair for his mobility. So you can see that these stairs present some definite problems. The thing that I want you to think about is when we're beginning the farm assessment, we often start our assessment from, the approach to the 10 miles of dirt road that we have to go down, and we're looking at the fences and the pastures and the terrain and topography. It's the same idea. It's the same idea here, except that we're looking at the approach as the point where the person gets out of their vehicle and goes to the front door. So we are looking at the surfaces. Do they have to walk on gravel, dirt? If it rains, is it muddy? Do they have a paved sidewalk? If they do have a sidewalk, is it too narrow, or is it buckling because of tree roots? Are there potholes in the surface? Are there shrubs that are overgrown and hanging over the walkways? And some of my northern AgrAbility specialist friends particularly would point out which direction is the house facing. And that's because if you have a northern exposure on your home, that's really just a notorious place to have icy conditions. That part of the house may lay in the shadows all day. So the direction that the house faces can also create a barrier to getting in and out. A lot of the solutions may be developing a covering for the walkway and the stairs, making sure that they're always free of ice and snow, and making sure that you have traction mats as well. Now, if we move on to the front door of the house, we need to say, well, are there stairs? Are there railings on each side of the stairs? How tall are the steps? I always take my tape measure and I take a quick measure of the steps. A lot of steps into some of the homes that I've been in are 8 inches or taller, and that can make it really difficult for somebody who's walking and trying to climb those steps, who may have bad knees or bad back. What kind of lighting is available to guide the person during the nighttime? Can they reach to change a light bulb? Is everything in good repair? If the person has to wheel up to the home, then stairs and thresholds, of course, are going to be a barrier. They might need a sturdy ramp. As a general rule of thumb, you guys probably already know this, but for every inch of rise of all of those stairs, you need 1 foot of ramp. So if the rise from the ground level to the top of the stairway is about 12 inches, then you need 12 feet of ramp. We might also be able to replace the thresholds so that they're flat for wheeling in and out of the doors. If you're walking up steps that are steep and they're difficult or painful, you might want to consider having a new stair stringer built and installed. It's going to be easier to walk up a 6-inch step than an 8-inch step. As an example, if you've looked at newly constructed public buildings, you'll notice that the buildings have 6-inch steps. They have railings on both sides of the steps. They have a slightly deeper stair tread that allows you to get your full foot on the step. And then there's a bull nose edge on the step to make it less likely that you're going to catch your toe. Those are all features that make climbing steps easier and safer. And then we might even think about adding non-slip treads on the stairs. I want you to also think about, don't just default to the ramp as a solution for somebody with a mobility problem. If you think about it, a ramp is primarily designed to help somebody who's wheeling a wheelchair. So if you have a ramp, you're actually increasing the distance that a person has to walk. So we also have to consider the fatigue factor. And so I don't always go with a ramp. Sometimes I recommend just changing the stairs to stairs that are easier and safer to climb, depending on my client. Other observations to make at the entrance. I wanted to again say something about the lighting. We can lower the lighting. We can add some lighting at ground level. We can change the lights from LEDs, from incandescent to LED. So make sure that you're looking at the stairs, the handrails, the porch lighting, the threshold that's there, and how wide is the doorway? Is it going to accommodate a wheelchair? And what kind of door handles are there? And what kind of door? Is it a solid core door? Is there a storm door as well? We can always change things like putting in lever door handles, which are easier to open than just knobs. And also, if we needed to, we could suggest automated doors. Okay, now we're going to, I think, move into the home. Yes. So just some general things to look at in the home interior. Right away, you want to notice what kind of flooring is there. And looking around, what kind of lighting do I see? What kind of mobility access? What's the width of the doorways? Are there interior stairs? So we're thinking just what is this space and how is the person going to use it? So I'm also looking at the location of outlets. Are they all hidden behind furniture? If they are available, are they high enough that a person in a wheelchair would be able to plug in a device or unplug something? And can they adjust the window coverings to let in more light or to shut out more light? And just in general, is this a tidy or a cluttered environment? Do I see any immediate trip hazards like electrical extension cords or throw rugs? I'm also asking, do you have smoke detectors? When's the last time you changed the battery in that? Do you have a carbon monoxide detector? Do you have an operable fire extinguisher in the home? And depending on where I work, I'm thinking emergency egress, especially in tornado country. I'd like to have a ground level safe room. Or does the person have a safe place to evacuate to in case of a storm? But I'm also thinking about if a person's in a wheelchair, not only can they get in through the front of the house, but can they get in out of the rear of the home or out of the bedroom in which they're staying. So think again about whether the flooring is slippery. Is there uneven carpeting or flooring? Is the carpeting or flooring torn in places? Do they have a clear pathway through the home, or is there too much clutter? Another thing about lighting, do we have a good balance of overhead lighting and task lighting, especially by the person's comfortable chair? If you have any concerns about any of these issues, you might be able to suggest repairing the flooring or replacing the carpeting with something easier to wheel on, removing some of the clutter, as well as clearing pathways. We can always increase good lighting. We can install adapted knobs on lamps if switches are hard to turn, and also adding night lighting. If you don't have one, I've made a note to myself to tell you, get a Patterson Medical catalog for just a million different ideas on products that can help do some of these really inexpensive changes, like on the light switches. And they're at www.healthyproductsforyou.com, but it's Patterson Medical. It's a kind of like a catalog that OTs love. It's our version of the Wish Book from Sears. Let's kind of turn to the bathroom. So we know that bathrooms are pretty notorious for being small. They often have really narrow doorways. I like to take a really general, do a sketch of the general layout of all the fixtures or take photos or both. And I want to note whether the bathtub or shower are a combo or a step-in. I want to know how high the tub is because a person might have difficulty stepping over the tub. I want to see if there are any non-slip surfaces in the tub. And is there any bathroom equipment that's already in place? A lot of times I see things like long-handled shower hoses, bath benches or chairs, and grab bars. If they aren't there, they may be needed. I'm also, again, looking at lighting. Environmental adjustment. Is the person able to have heat in the bathroom, safe heat, and maybe they have a heated towel bar? Do they have appropriate venting? I know that in a lot of bathrooms that I have assessed, there may not be appropriate venting, and you get a lot of moisture buildup, which makes surfaces a lot slippery for the person. And it also makes it hard for someone to breathe, to have supersaturated moisture in the air. So I'm concerned about people that might have cardiac or respiratory issues. And do they have some rugs in the bathroom? And if there are rugs in the bathroom, are they non-slip? Do they really stick to the floor? And even if they do, if a person's wheeling in there with a walker or using a mobility device, that rug can actually become a pretty serious trip hazard. And one of the other things that I do is I want to see if the person needs to sit or can they stand at the sink. If they need to sit at the sink, can they wheel underneath it? And just making sure that making note of whether the plug-ins and the lighting within the bathroom are GFCI protected. That might be another thing that needs to change. Some of the other things about bathrooms that I like to look at doing is if they have a low commode, can we get a higher commode in place? Can we install a pocket door if necessary to make it a little more accessible? I mean, bathroom doors are usually maybe 28, maybe 29 inches wide in most of our older housing. So if you think about it, if you have an 18-inch wide wheelchair seat, you need to add about 6 more inches of that so that you have, instead of 18 inches wide, your wheelchair is actually probably 24 inches wide. And if you're in a 20-inch wide wheelchair, you're actually probably running about 26 inches wide. So that 28-inch doorway or 29-inch doorway, you're going to be banging your knuckles going through there. So anything that we can do to make that wider for walkers and wheelchairs is a real win-win. One of the other things that we can do and we can find at a home product store are some swing-away door hinges, and that'll usually give us about 2 more inches of clearance to get into the bathroom. Other solutions might be adding non-slip strips to the bottom of the tub, putting grab bars in the areas of the tub, the shower, or the toilet. And I always say, put the grab bar where you need it. I'll have the person stand or wheel to where they're going to get into the tub and just reach out. Just reach out to where you need a handhold. And that's where I put the grab bar. We don't have to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act recommendation on that because it's a private dwelling. So just keep that in mind. Put the grab bar where it's needed. If fatigue or balance is an issue, the person might consider having a bath chair or a bath bench. I like bath chairs with backs, and I like bath benches with backs. I love to add the long shower hose. You can just reach anywhere that you need to. I think one of the great things that has happened is now we can find a lot of these bathroom home improvements, all this big range of bathroom safety products. We can find it at Home Depot or Ace Hardware or True Value or Lowe's. Now, bathrooms are, as I said before, a real big problem area. Some of the extensive remodels sometimes have to happen, and that can be a real deal breaker because people can't afford it. But if you've got a narrow doorway and you can't turn a wheelchair around in the space, something probably needs to change. The person, maybe they can find the funding or the resources to maybe steal some space out of an adjacent room, or maybe the bathroom's in a place where they can bump out some space. But they're going to, at that point, they're going to need skilled, licensed carpentry, plumbing, electrical, and we'll talk a little bit in another slide about finding skilled services to do those kinds of modifications. But in general, an accessible bathroom needs to have a 36-inch wide doorway. We need enough space to turn a wheelchair 360 degrees, and that's a standard wheelchair. We need to have a large, hopefully walk-in shower or walk-in tub, a higher commode usually, grab bars, and sinks that can be wheeled under. So those are some of the general principles for the bathroom. Bedrooms are definitely on the list. This is a picture of one of my clients' bedrooms on a ranch out in New Mexico. And you see there's just a small little princess single wide bed, but the room is full of some clutter. She's storing some of her bathroom equipment there, and this is a person with a spinal cord injury. And there are a lot of rugs and things that are hard to wheel on the floor. So again, we're looking at the width of the doorway. We're looking for adequate lighting, looking at the kind of flooring. What's the layout of the room? How is it furnished? Is there access around the bed? You can see this bed is pushed up against a wall. And is there room for lift equipment? This client actually did have a Hoyer or a patient lift equipment, but they were not able to fit it in the room and underneath the bed. So it was actually occupying another third bedroom. In terms of safety, is there emergency exit? Are there carbon monoxide and smoke detectors? Do they have emergency lighting? Could be just something as easy as a operable flashlight in the nightstand. Is there an absence of trip hazards? And I also try to just keep my eyes open for presence of smoking materials. So if you see problems in the bedroom, just suggest that the client might remove the trip hazards that are created by things like electrical cords, throw rugs, big thick comforters or quilts that are too large for the bed. I can't even tell you how many people I've worked with who have fallen in the bedroom and broken a hip because they tripped over a piece of bedding. You might suggest that they run electrical extension cords behind furniture if they need to have them, and that cord should be rated to match the appliance that they're using with it. Repair the flooring if it's needed, remove carpet if it's going to enhance wheeling for mobility, if they have throw rugs, hopefully they can either remove them or put them down securely with carpet tape, reconfigure the closet so that items can be reached easily, adjust the height of the bed. If it's too high or too low, you can actually find bed risers at places like Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond. You can even change a mattress to a low-profile mattress from a tall mattress if the bed needs to be lowered, although I have known people that have cut the feet off the bottoms of their beds. I like having those half rails to assist the person with coming to a sitting position or for turning in bed, although they also make things like bed ladders that you'll find in the products catalog. And always, always, always consider adding some more lighting if it's needed. The bedroom is a great place for an escapement window if it's on a single level, and that would probably be an example of a moderate home modification. In all instances, I recommend that the person let the local fire department know which room that folks might need some help evacuating the farm house. So in the kitchen, I think you guys have got it. We're looking at the flooring. We're looking at the lighting. I'd like to know if the stove is gas or electric. Gas stoves, of course, are an issue because they're flammable. Electric, not as much. Things just tend to melt on the stove. What are the heights of the countertops and the cupboards? Does the person have access to the oven? Can they get in to the refrigerator? Can they get into the pantry? Are the what kind of faucet and sink are there? So I'm looking at those kinds of details. Does the kitchen have enough space to move around in? I like, especially for people with amputations, to maybe have a sturdy chair or stool that they can sit on while they're doing food prep. I've seen people that do really well with just mobility on their crutches, and they leave their prosthetic leg behind in the bedroom, but they're leaning against the stove, so it would be easy to catch yourself on fire. That's why it would be nice to just have a stool in there. We can do a lot of recommendations to increase safety and ease in the kitchen. I don't know about you, but I love those good grips, kitchen knives, anything good grips, whether it's a bottle opener or a spoon or whatever. They can make it easier to grip for somebody with arthritis or weak grasp. I like to change to lever faucets, maybe have a shallower sink that makes rinsing and washing dishes easier, get an electric stove instead of a gas stove, and have, for safety, a small handheld ABC extinguisher in the kitchen, and maybe having a couple of spaces where we can lower the cabinets so that people that are wheeling have a place to put things. Now, with the oven and a wheelchair, I like to make sure the person has an oven stick. An oven stick is simply a wooden stick that has kind of a prong at one end and a hook at the other end, so that the person can both push in the oven rack and pull the oven rack out. I like to have good thick pot holders. I like fire-resistant thick pad to cover the person's legs. And a quick solution to lowering an area is to put like a wooden cutting board in one of the kitchen drawers so that they can take stuff right out of the oven and put it in a lower area. And then so what I do is I put the wooden cutting board in the drawer, and then I kind of close it so that I have a nice tight, stable fit. If the person can walk, if they're ambulatory, maybe having a cart so that they can move things from one place to another, or that they can slide objects, heavy objects especially, along counters. I mean, a gallon of milk weighs 8 pounds. So maybe one of the solutions could actually be purchasing something in a smaller size. Laundry, again, are the supplies accessible? Can they reach the shelving? Do they have lever door handles? Are the appliances front loading? This is a place where I really like motion sensing lights, so that if I'm wheeling or carrying something. I don't have to think about the light. It just comes right on. Is it properly invented? And like most wet spaces, what are the conditions of the floors? Rooms that get wet may have a sagging structure, and that might need to be something that's repaired. So just drilling down, some of the most common modifications that you're going to see needed are ramps or replacing the stairs so that they're easier to climb, bathroom grab bars, railings on stairways, widening of door frames, repairing inadequate flooring, and just the most common structural issues is there's just not enough floor space, or you don't have reinforcement in the wall where you need it, or the person may have financial limitations. So just like there's a solution hierarchy for assistive technology, we have one for home mods as well. And the first thing is, can we make recommendations that solve the problem without purchasing additional stuff? Can we rearrange the furniture? Can we remove trip hazards? Can we make simple changes? That's the next thing. Commercially available products like the good grips or lever door knobs or non-slip products, increasing our lighting, quality of lighting, just getting a little extra clearance through doorways and adding safety equipment. Then the moderate modifications, things like adding ramps, reconfiguring stairs, widening doorways, even some of the environmental modifications that are now available, like Nest, that you can get and operate all kinds of appliances and monitor your home from your smart home. And then, of course, there are extensive modifications that are very expensive. And we often, if we're refurbishing a structure or doing new construction, we need to think about funding. So before I get to funding, just reminding all of us that we have to be client-centered. We need to let the client and the family drive this process. There are some great educational tools, fortunately, that entities like AARP have created in both English and Spanish, and I've given you a couple of links to home modifications to promote independent living, and that guides the person through the process, as well as the Home Fit Guide. So these are two great things that I want you to go and get. So this is screenshots from Home Fit. You can see that things are just very simple explanations. They guide the person through the process. They help them set achievable goals. This would be really good for aging farmers and their families who have some time to make these changes. And then, of course, there are some people that we need to help drive that process. They might have a sudden or severe onset of disability. So one of the assessments that I want to bring to your attention is one called the CASPAR. It's the Comprehensive Assessment and Solution Process for Aging Residents. And I've got a little bit of a screenshot there. You're getting client information, medical diagnosis, mobility aids that they're already using, and a self-report from them on how well they're moving around. And then it helps the person set goals and gives you an opportunity to describe the home in good detail and then summarize the information. You need the CASPAR, you need the camera, you need a 25-foot tape measure, you're ready to go. And you can request this from the link that I'm giving you. I did say you could download it, but you can actually have to request it now. You might want to call in the big guns to help you with the process with your client. There are certified aging and place specialists. These are folks who have been trained through the National Association of Home Builders and the AARP and the American Occupational Therapy Association is another partner. But these are folks that have trained and have tested, have been educated to know about the unique needs of older adults, aging in place, and common remodeling projects and solutions. So I've given you a link to the CAPS as well. And I'd like to mention that you can become a CAPS. All kinds of people become CAPS. Electricians, plumbers, assistive technology folks, occupational therapists, occupational therapy assistants, just all kinds of people go through the CAPS training. You might also want to consult with an occupational therapist. They understand health and disability issues and how to help match the individual to the environment. They're really good at collaborating with a home improvement contractor to develop a plan for modifications and also make sure that the fit and finish of those modifications were done in a way that the client can use them. So I think this is important information. Recommendations, there are a lot more recommendations than this, but I think these are kind of gold nuggets on recommendations that the clients have for a contractor. The first thing that I do is I tell them, get a prescription from your doctor or a letter of medical necessity from an occupational therapist or physical therapist, just describing what kind of modifications are needed. So even if there's not readily available funding, they may at least be able to take the redesign of their home, take that off their taxes. The other thing is to find an established local contractors, someone that the community knows that this person cares about the quality of their work and their reputation. Make sure that the contractor has insurance and that they're licensed to do the work. Ask for a copy, not just a handshake. And does the contractor have experience with disability retrofits? Now, if they don't, that might not be a total deal breaker, but they're going to have to get up to speed on what's required. It's a red flag to me if the contractor says, oh yeah, I know all about ADA. This is a home, the ADA doesn't apply. You need to make the modifications that the person needs. If possible, in your community, get 3 bids. Call the person's references. Make sure that they can give you an agreement where they have to stay within a budget. And I always feel like I'm a drug dealer or something when I say this, but never pay all your money up front, and make sure that the person is permitted, get the proper permits to do the work. All right, so then some resources to make renovations. Farmers Home Administration makes grants and loans to rural income elders. Community development block grants are often used to help citizens maintain and upgrade their homes. There's also energy and weatherization assistance programs. There are funds from Medicare and Medicaid for durable medical equipment when you have a doctor's prescription. I'd also like to point out area offices on aging. They have funds through the Older Americans Act to modify and repair homes. And then there's rural housing repair and rehabilitation loans through rural development, so ultimately from the USDA. And then we're really fortunate in most states to have alternative financing programs, equipment exchange programs, tele-to-work grants that come to us through assistive technology grant projects and their partners. And then another big funder, the Veterans Administration, for folks with service-connected disabilities. They are eligible for one-time home modifications up to a particular financial threshold, but it is a good sum of money. So I know that we ran through that as quickly as we could. I want to know if you have any final questions or comments. Oh, and one more thing I want you to know about. If you want to learn more about how to recommend home modifications, I got my certificate through the University of Southern California at the Andrus Gerontology Center, and it's through the National Resource Center for Supportive Housing and Home Modification Fall Prevention Center of Excellence. And that's all I have.
Well, Carla, thank you very much for that wealth of information. That comes from a wealth of experience over the years, I know.
Okay, so question 1 is, with mobile homes or older homes, is it ever advisable to consult with an engineer or construction professional? Any suggestions on who to call? The answer is yes. Your construction professional is likely to be sufficient to let you know what is achievable and feasible as far as improving the structural integrity of the structure, or if it's possible. So again, I would call a licensed contractor to make that assessment and determine if it's feasible and how much is it going to cost to do that. I can tell you the occupational therapist that worked with the individuals whose wheelchair fell through the floor, they were able to reinforce the structure so that the unit was accessible to the wheelchair after that. But it was eye-opening. Any suggestions on preparing for or dealing, this is question 2, any suggestions on preparing for or dealing with the emotional issues related to making home changes? Yes, I try to be just very forthright with folks because they're often very straight forward with me, and I just try to have an honest conversation, no judgment, of course, about the current situation that they're in. I also don't say, well, if you don't make changes, you're going to wind up in a nursing home, because I think that is not helpful, although many of my clients have had things like that communicated to them. So I think if I've established a trusting relationship with them, we can talk about that. And I emphasize, again, let's make your home work for you. Let's make your home comfortable for you. Let's make your home enjoyable for you and your family. And I think then that takes maybe the sting of perhaps losing physical function a little more out of the equation, so that you, instead of focusing on the loss of a person's function, you're focusing on the future memories that the person's going to be making there with their family. Question 3, do you recommend MediAlert devices that people can wear if they fall, etc.? Absolutely recommend it. Now, I wish that such services were free. It does cost to have medical alert devices, and they may not save you in every situation, but they're better than nothing, I think, especially for people that are living alone or are going to be spending a lot of time in the dwelling by themselves. Question 4, do you feel there is a demand for voice command smart home products such as Amazon Alexa, Apple Siri, lights, radio, calling, texting, thermostats, door locks? Yes, there is a demand. 20 years ago, if I was making recommendations for high-tech, what I would call environmental controls for a home, it would cost thousands of dollars. And now, because there's consumer demand for smart home products, people with disabilities are able to take advantage of the technology at a much reduced cost. Question 5, I missed the beginning of the call. Can you define CAPS for me again? Absolutely. So CAPS are Certified Aging-in-Place Specialists. They're trained through the National Association of Home Builders in a project that's a collaboration of AARP and the American Occupational Therapy Association.
Well, it sounds like that's the end of the questions. Thank you again, Carla. We always appreciate the time you dedicate to being with us. So I will, as we close, I'll open a final poll. If you'd like to make any comments, you can please feel free to do that. I'll leave that open for a few minutes. Otherwise, we hope to see many of you again tomorrow for our sessions on the VA Accelerator Program and also on accessible beekeeping. So
All right.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, Paul.